Oh, where do we go?
We're live. Well, we'll get started. I think we're live. So here with Angie Renna after some technical difficulties getting in. It's the world we live in with Zoom. So, but Angie Renna is the Republican candidate in the 50th State Senate District that includes Cayuga and Onondaga counties, most of the city of Auburn for those of us in Cayuga County, and then the towns of Brutus, Cato, Ira, and Senate. And a big chunk of Onondaga County too. I know a little part of the city of Syracuse and a bunch of towns that I won't rattle off because that would just be that would be too much, I think. But Angie, why don't we get us started with just an introduction? Tell us about yourself, since this is the first Facebook Live interview we've done together.
Well, first of all, Robert, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be in your presence, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today and to all of your viewers. So thank you. And as far as who I am, first and foremost, I like to start off with I'm a mom. I have two wonderful sons who are 23, and I feel I've done, along with their dad, a great job of raising them. And we're very proud that they went to college and came back here to start their careers and are staying close to home. And that's something, in this day and age, you don't see very much of. So that's the first thing that defines me. But then secondly, I'm a small business owner. I moved up here about 26 years ago and always have had the entrepreneurial spirit inside of me in one way or another. So I started my own business and have been blessed with great opportunities and great clients and great staff. And it's through really doing that I've grown to love working with people, helping them start their own businesses, mentoring women who have the desire to do the same thing, be a working mom and balance that family life and work-life balance, which is really difficult. And, with that opportunity to be a business owner, you always have the opportunity to reach out to the community and help. And so I've done that. I, for many years, was part of I'm still a member, but on the board of an organization that focuses on women in business and helping them grow their entrepreneurial spirit. But not all of those women own businesses. They're just looking for ways to grow in their industry. And I've been a part of that for many, many years and proud to be so. So, it's always important to give back. And I'm a firm believer in that. And ultimately, that's why I'm running. It's time to give back. I've been really blessed in my life. And, you start to see how things are changing. And we have a great opportunity here in Central New York to make an impact and keep things going on the right direction. So that's why I'm running.
Yeah. So to build upon that, I guess, what do you think you can bring to the state Senate for this district specifically? Obviously, this is an open seat, so it's going to be a wide open competition, opportunity for you and your opponent, obviously, to really outline how you would approach this job as state senator. So how would you approach it? What do you think you bring to the table, and how would you do the job?
I think the primary reasons for why I wanted to run were were one set of reasons prior to COVID. But really, even during COVID and when we look beyond COVID, are going to be the same primary reasons, which are first, public safety. My family members are in law enforcement and have done a tremendous job with a long career in law enforcement. And we support law enforcement, and that's really important for people to know out there. And one of the reasons why I decided to run was because of public safety, keeping our families and our kids safe. And when we see some of the legislation that's passed over the last couple of years, public safety is going in a different direction. And we really need to pull back the reins on that and get control back, because we want to make sure our kids are safe when they're out on the street. And we're seeing some really terrible headlines, especially right now. And that's going to be a primary focus, working through the bail reform, the discovery laws that were passed that are not perfect. They need a lot of work, so we want to focus on that. But also when we're hearing the anti-police rhetoric, really bringing back into focus all of the good work that our men and women in blue do is really important, and I want to work on that. But then secondly, we've got a great opportunity here in Central New York to really develop economically what we can do through small business development and encouraging new growth in different areas, and as well as peeling back some of the regulation that makes it really hard. New York State is not known for a great business climate. New York City has benefited by the fact that it's just New York City, and so that's where businesses go. But in Central New York and upstate New York, we suffer because we have to attract business here for different reasons. And it's very difficult when you're within a state that has high taxes, high regulation, and really a business climate that's not going to attract out of state and other opportunities within the business world. And that's really what's going to help keep our kids here. If we can grow our economy and provide these opportunities for good paying jobs for our kids, then they're going to stay. And that's what we really want to see. We've seen so much of this out migration, especially when you get to a retirement phase of life. My business is retiring people. I've done this for many years. Financial planning is the crux of my business, and I work with a lot of people on helping them retire. But what ends up happening is they're looking for another place to live that is lower in taxes and maybe more affordable health insurance, and sometimes it has to do with good weather, but that's not always the case. And so we're seeing an out-migration in that regard. We need to make sure that we have a growing population here of really good qualified candidates that we can put to work, and that we can give them really good paying jobs. And that's going to help fuel the fire of the economic development that we need to see here. And that's going to provide our families with a great quality of life. People are going to be able to put food on the table. And it's really difficult to have that conversation right now among COVID-19. We still have a lot of businesses that haven't been able to open up, like our gyms, our bowling alleys, our movie theaters. So they're really feeling the pain right now. But we're hoping that when we get past this, that we can really focus on not just getting these businesses back open and getting our people back to work, but also to encourage new business growth so that there's more opportunities. And, think about the kids that are going to school in the great colleges around town. They're from out of town. We have an opportunity to grab those folks and grab their talent and really invigorate the talent pool here in Central New York. So we want to really do some good work on focusing in that area. And then, if I was going to do a top three, obviously the third has to be fiscal sanity. Before COVID-19, we were coming in with a $6 billion budget deficit, and that's blown right out of the water now. Forget that. I mean, we're at 16, 17 billion, I'm sure at this point, if not more. We're losing a lot of revenue because businesses aren't up and running fully. You're hearing, with the localities, their budget issues. We've got decreases in sales tax. But before COVID, we already had a problem. And to fix that problem, my Democrat friends think that we have to raise taxes in order to fix that problem. That's not true. That is not going to encourage people to stay here. That is not going to encourage business development and economic growth. We have to do the opposite. We have to focus on the economic growth. That in turn is going to drive the train through some opportunity for more revenue to come in through sales tax. And it's going to be a trickle down economic effect to all of our small businesses. And so we really need to dive deep into the budget and figure out what's going wrong. And it's been happening for many, many years. It's a very difficult situation to look at and say, oh, that is the one issue that's causing our budget to be in a $6 billion budget deficit. But it can be done, and it needs to be done. And it needs to be done in a, in a bipartisan way. We need to work across the aisle together to really figure out what we can do to get our budget back in line. And it's going to take probably a couple of years, at this point, to really do that, unless we get some federal money. And we can talk about that if you want, but that's been in the headlines quite a bit. And at this point, it's almost a real Hail Mary. We really need some federal stimulus to come through our way to really give us any fighting chance at this point.
I do want to get back to public safety, but let's talk about COVID-19, because obviously this has many different impacts. I mean, we see the health crisis part of it, obviously, but also the economic. And you mentioned, the impact on government budgets. Certainly, we've seen that locally, but with the state's approach, I guess, what do you think needs to be done to address these areas? Because this is still very much an ongoing pandemic. It's not over yet. And the economic crisis is still ongoing. There's just in New York, unemployment is over 10%. So, in terms of addressing, the health and the economic, I guess, what do you see as state policies that can help that process along?
Yeah, well, we're not going to need to rely on, I think, our federal partners as well in this, quite honestly, because if you look at it, Robert, we need a lot of PPE funding to just get our kids back to school. Somebody had asked me that on Facebook yesterday, what's your plan if you want the kids to go back to school, which I do. I want them to be safe. That's the primary goal, but I do believe that our kids need to get back to school, but what is it going to take to get them there? And we know that masks are working. And so we need money for PPE. We need money for proper ventilation, especially in some of our older schools. We need testing, money for testing, ongoing testing. That's going to be part of our life, unfortunately, for quite some time, just to make sure that we are really over this hurdle. So you got to look, forward into 2021 before you really get an idea of, what COVID means. But we have to prepare for it. And those are things that really it's not been done. Let's be frank, it's not been done. When you look at the budget, there's a lot of wasteful spending, and we really need to tailor that back, but we need to prioritize. And when you look at COVID-19 and where that's taking us, PPE is going to be a big budget buster from the state level all the way on down to the localities. And where are we going to get that money? It's going to have to come from some federal support, as well as just tightening up the reins on some other expenditures. And you're seeing across the board layoffs, in different counties, and people are having to make hard decisions. But guess what? It's unfortunate, but that happens in a lot of different areas where you have to make tough decisions. People are doing the best that they can during this time. And, my job as a legislator would be just to continue to support and make really good decisions on behalf of my community. And that's what I plan to do.
To public safety, I wanted to ask you about how do you balance the, I think voters of all stripes would say they want their communities to be safe. On the other hand, there's this, ongoing discussion about racial justice and the need to, address whether it's systemic racism or police brutality or, the list goes on. So, how do you balance the public safety agenda, part of your platform with, the need to address these systemic issues that have been obviously a longstanding problem?
Yeah, well, first let's really just start with bail reform. and it's not a racial issue so much for me. It's a poverty issue. You know, why do we want bail elimination? It's because people can't afford bail, and the people that are doing really low level, low offense crimes that cannot afford bail should not sit in jail, whatever race you are, and that's a good thing. And that's where the foundation of bail reform can be. But what ended up happening, as you know, is there was a long list of crimes that were eligible for no bail that should not have been on that list. Those that may not necessarily be completely or like so evidently violent, but could turn violent. Crimes that we know that we have repeat offenders and will continue to repeat on those crimes, and then unfortunately look to some more serious crimes down the road. There were crimes that were bail eliminated that were offenses against children that should never have been on that list. It just was a bad bill, and it was a bill that was passed through the budget, as you know. And then on top of that, they passed as part of that was the discovery laws. And I can tell you that that was a very painful process for a lot of our local police departments. And in the city of Syracuse, when you have the kind of crime rates that they have, their crime lab, the county crime lab, was always backed up to begin with. So then to put a time constraint on those evidence technicians and the detectives to get this information through discovery in a 15-day time period, which was the original law, was just ridiculous. In some cases, you just cannot do that. But they didn't have those conversations with the law enforcement partners, so they didn't know. They're just, legislator politicians that have career politicians that have been there, and instead of having the conversation of, we want to make sure that we're making things equitable for people, can you help us figure that out? They didn't do that, and they should have. So, but what's really concerning to me with the bail reform and the discovery laws, what ended up happening was it allowed people to think that they could just continue to do crimes, even if they were low level, without really any consequence. And so you're seeing a rash of increase in crimes because there's no consequence. And unfortunately, if you look, some of the offenders are very young. We just saw an article of a report yesterday of a 12-year-old stealing a car, crashed it into a telephone pole. He's in the hospital. And, bail reform may not touch him necessarily, especially when you're looking at the age of the offender. But in some ways, it does, because they know that they're just going to, in a lot of cases, get off without any consequence. So we're seeing an increase in crime just from that. But what's also something that no one's talking about is sometimes you arrest somebody and you put them in jail overnight because they're intoxicated or they have a drug problem and they are just out of their mind on drugs. When you put that person into jail overnight, that starts a detox problem, a detox situation. That helps those people with their problem. And then while they're in jail, they're given the resources to continue to get help for whatever their problem is. When you're no longer able to do that and keep somebody overnight, they're not getting the help. And now we've got mental health issues as well as addiction issues that are going unchecked because we're not able to keep those people overnight and give them the help that they need. It's not just a matter of incarceration. Hey, we want to lock you up and throw away the key. That's not all that the justice system does. It also provides people with a pathway for help. And so we're missing that opportunity greatly, I think. And that's a conversation that we should be talking about more, but we don't.
In terms of the crime, because I know bail reform has been certainly a lightning rod, if you will. But how much do you think that this pandemic, people being home, and especially people being unemployed, that, the jobs aren't there, obviously concerns about, their financial situation, whatever. How much do you think that has that contributed to, some of the crime issues that we've seen in different parts of the state?
I'm certain that it has had a huge effect. Um, when you think about people are bored. The weather's really, first of all, let's be honest. When the weather's nice, we see increase in crime. That's just how it's historically always gone. People come outside more. But now if they're not working and not everything is open, from a business standpoint, they're bored. Of course, it provides for an opportunity for someone to do something that they may not have done otherwise. But a lot of the cases that we're seeing are really, gang related. We're seeing a huge increase in gang related crimes and affecting younger kids. When you're 12, 13, 14 years old, you're looking for something. You're looking for someone to just pay attention to you and be accepted. And unfortunately, the streets have a death grip on our kids, and they fall victim to feeling like that's the place that they can be accepted, and they're doing things that they wouldn't normally do. So COVID has a part to play in that, but I think that bail reform, COVID, and then anti-police rhetoric is all contributing factors of the increase of crime that we're seeing. So we can place a blame on anyone or all three, but the fact of the matter is it's a conversation that needs to continue to be had. We have to fix it because you and I, my kids, mom and dad down the street, we're all worried about our safety. And it doesn't matter what neighborhood you live in, whether you're living in the city of Auburn, the city of Syracuse, or one of the suburbs in Cayuga County, it leaches. It leaches over borders into our towns, and it affects us all. So we have to all be really vigilant about having good conversations on how we address this. It's a big issue.
I did want to ask, a question that leading up to the primary election, I asked all the candidates about, and then that was how this pandemic has affected your campaign, because certainly in your case, there was going to be a special election in April that was pushed back and then eventually canceled. So I'm sure that that's part of the equation for you too. But just with obviously there's restrictions, the health concerns, economic concerns as well. How is that? How has all that affected your campaign?
Yeah, well, listen, since I'm not a politician and I've never campaigned before, I don't know if I really know any better. But I do know that I'm not able to get out and shake hands and kiss babies and do all those traditional things that people get to do during campaign time. So, we're missing out on that. We're missing out on the opportunity to really get out in the community and talk to people. And, that's unfortunate. But we rely, just like everyone else is, on this type of technology, on our social media campaigns. We started a podcast that my team would be very mad at me if I didn't tell you that we started our own podcast a few weeks ago called CNY Matters with Angie Renna. And so it's another opportunity to be able to talk about current issues and what people want to hear about. And we have special guests and give people the opportunity to talk with us and share their thoughts and ideas, because at the end of the day, I'm not running for me, I'm running for the community. I work for all of you, so it's really important that we have that dialogue, and in a campaign time is when you really get a good vibe from people about what the issues are that they care about. And when you can't go door to door, you miss out on that opportunity. So we try to open up the avenue through social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, as well as the podcast. But there's some things that we can get out to and practice social distancing and wear our masks and do things. I'm doing a lot of volunteering. I just did a tremendous job from the American Dairy Association. I got to give them a shout out. And they've been going to all different towns doing their milk delivery, but it's not just milk. Robert, I couldn't believe the operation the other day. We were giving out to each car a box like this big full of meat, another box that big full of produce, 4 gallons of milk, another box full of dairy, like yogurt and cottage cheese and things like that. And, 2,000 cars in that day were served, 2,000. And they're doing it, almost on a weekly basis. And as these people were coming through the line, they were saying, this is only going to get me through a couple of days, but thank God that you guys are doing this. And what an inspiring thing to be able to participate in and see firsthand really the detriment that COVID-19 how it's impacted detrimentally to our families in our community. And we all should be, volunteering and rolling up our sleeves and doing that. So we're constantly out there volunteering and doing the work with our community, because that's the most important thing.
Well, to close with I'm sure we'll talk again, on this platform, but over the next 2.5 months, really, I think we're at now. What what will that sprint be like for you, and what can we expect from your campaign going forward?
It is a sprint, and you hit it, earlier about the special election. I mean, I jumped into this kind of late in the game, and it was going to be a sprint to the special election in April. I only would have had, I think, 2 months to campaign for that. And then it got delayed to June. So it was like another sprint in the midst of COVID to get to June, and then the governor canceled it. We've been sprinting this whole time. I mean, we've been working so hard, and we will continue to do so. So now it's a matter of really focusing in on what matters most to everybody and making sure we get our message out there. Yeah, we know that as a first-time candidate, not everybody knows my name. This certainly will help. And we need to continue to make sure that people are learning about me and that they want to come out and vote for me. And that's going to be the most important thing from now until November 3rd.
Angie Renna, Republican candidate in the 50th Senate District. Angie, thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you, Robert.